You don't clean your house. You regulate your nervous system. There are 5 patterns of compulsive cleaning, and the 5th one explains everything. Imagine your nervous system as a warehouse where every alarm sensor was installed during your childhood, and then never turned off, even now. In your safe adult home, in your quiet apartment, the alarms are scanning for threats that ended decades ago, for chaos that lives only in your nervous system's memory. And cleaning is the only switch you ever found that quiets them. Temporarily, each wipe of the counter, each fold of the laundry, every one of those small actions is a hand on the alarm switch. That's what we're going to talk about today. Not your house, your warehouse. There's a strange thing psychologists noticed in Toronto. A researcher named Spike Lee did something unusual in 2022. He watched people clean, not to study hygiene, to study what was happening inside them. He had people imagine cleaning. Just imagine it. No sponges, no sinks, no actual cleaning. And here's what he found. The people who imagined cleaning showed lower anxiety levels. Their heart rate slowed. Their cortisol shifted. The cleaning was working. But not on the house. It was working on the warehouse. If your warehouse has been running on alarm mode since childhood, cleaning isn't a preference. It's medicine. A medicine you found, without anyone teaching you. A medicine that worked, even if you didn't know what it was treating. Welcome to Brainophy, where the brain meets the soul. There are 5 patterns of compulsive cleaning. I'll cover all 5, but pattern 5 is the one that explains everything. It's the reason most people can't actually stop. Stay until the end. Because if you have it, you might not realize who you actually are anymore. Let's begin. Pattern 4. The crisis cleaner. The person who cleans when something breaks. Internally. About 25% of compulsive cleaners are this type. It activates when your nervous system feels overwhelmed, after a fight, before a hard conversation, when grief hits and you don't have words for it. You suddenly find yourself mopping at 11 p.m., reorganizing the pantry, folding laundry that didn't need folding, vacuuming corners no one will ever see. Here's the origin. You grew up in a home where big feelings weren't allowed to be spoken. Maybe one parent was emotionally volatile. Maybe both were emotionally absent. Maybe the rule was unspoken but absolute. Don't make this worse than it already is. But the feelings still happened, in your small body, with nowhere to go. So your body learned to discharge them through your hands. You weren't avoiding the feeling. You were translating it into action, into surface, into the only language your body was allowed to use. A 6-year-old learning to scrub floors because being still felt dangerous. That child is still inside you. And every time the world overwhelms you, that child reaches for the broom. Your hands move before your tears do. That's not discipline. That's grief looking for a sponge. In adult life, this becomes a problem, because now you can't access your emotions until you've channeled them through your hands. The feeling becomes inaccessible unless there's a sponge involved. You'll find yourself 2 hours into reorganizing the bathroom cabinet and not remember what you were feeling when you started. You become a manager of feelings you never actually meet, a custodian of inner storms that pass through you without ever being witnessed. Here's how to recognize it. If you reorganize the pantry at 11 p.m. after a fight, you're this type. If someone close to you ever said, "You always clean when you're upset," and you didn't even realize you were upset, you're this type. You're not avoiding feelings. You're translating them. The work isn't to stop translating. The work is to let yourself hear the original language once in a while. It was never really about the house. But pattern 4 is the surface. We're going deeper, and we're getting closer to the one that explains why most people can't stop. Pattern 3, the anticipatory cleaner. The person who cleans before something hasn't happened yet. About 30% of compulsive cleaners are this type. It's the most exhausting one. It activates when guests are coming. A family member. Even a delivery person you'll see for 30 seconds. But here's the strange part. It activates when no one is actually coming either. A meeting tomorrow, a potential phone call. Here's the origin. You grew up in a home where mess was punished, where being caught with a dirty room meant being yelled at, or compared to siblings who kept theirs clean. Maybe your mother criticized you when guests came over. Maybe your father went silent when the house wasn't right. You weren't cleaning the room. You were avoiding the moment your room would be inspected. Sometimes you clean a house no one is coming to, not even in your imagination, but your body still prepares for judgment. That's not preparation, that's survival. In adult life, this becomes exhausting. Every event becomes a performance. Every visit becomes a test. You can't enjoy company because you've spent the previous 6 hours preparing the stage. By the time guests arrive, you're depleted. You smile through dinner while your nervous system is still ringing. Your home stops being a place you live in. It becomes a place you manage. A theater you maintain for an audience that exists mostly in memory. Here's how to recognize it. If you can't enjoy a Sunday afternoon without imagining how the room would look if someone walked in unannounced, you're this type. If you feel relief when guests leave, not because you're an introvert, but because the inspection is over, you're this type. You're not cleaning for the guests. You're cleaning for the part of you that never stopped expecting punishment. Pattern 2. The reset cleaner. The person who cleans to mark transitions, because no one taught them how to feel them. About 20% of compulsive cleaners are this type. It activates at the seam between chapters. End of the workday. End of the week. End of a relationship. You can't move forward until the space behind you has been physically reorganized. Here's the origin. This pattern is actually the healthiest of the 4. Cleaning works as a psychological separation ritual, a way of telling your brain, that part is over. This part begins now. Humans need transitions. We need ceremonies. Cleaning became your ceremony because no one taught you any other way. Maybe no one closed chapters in your house growing up, so you built your own ritual out of brooms and dish rags. It was beautiful, actually. You were giving yourself what no one else gave you. But here's the trap. If cleaning becomes the only way you can close a chapter, then your life never actually moves forward. It just resets. Rest becomes something you have to qualify for. Joy becomes something you have to earn. Here's how to recognize it. If you can't sit down on Sunday until the laundry is folded, you're this type. If endings make your hands twitch toward cleaning supplies, you're this type. The ritual was protective. The work isn't to stop the ritual. The work is to learn that you deserve the rest, even when you haven't earned it. You're getting close now. But pattern 1 still isn't the deepest one. Pattern 5 is, and pattern 5 is the reason most people don't actually want to stop. Pattern 1. The identity cleaner. The person whose cleanliness has become who they are. About 15% of compulsive cleaners are this type. But it's the one with the deepest roots. This pattern doesn't have a trigger, because it's always on. You don't clean. You are clean. It's not a behavior, it's an identity. I'm just a clean person. I can't function in mess. It's just how I'm wired. Here's the origin. Somewhere very early, you discovered that being clean was something people praised you for. Maybe parents, who said you're such a good kid when your room was tidy. Maybe just the absence of criticism. That quiet absence that felt like love. You learned that cleanliness was a way to be seen as good. To be the easy child, the one who didn't need anything. And somewhere along the way, the cleaning stopped being about your environment. It became about who you are. And the scariest part? It feels like you. You can't relax in mess. Not because mess is harmful, but because mess threatens the only identity that ever earned you love. You can't let a partner see you in chaos, because some part of you believes they only love the clean version. You can't allow yourself a messy phase of life, because messiness feels like disqualification. You're not really a clean person. You're a person who never got to find out what they actually are. Cleanliness became the costume so early that you forgot there was a self underneath. A self who might love improvisation, who might love the kind of life that doesn't fit in straight rows. You've been so good at being the clean person for so long that you don't know what other versions of you were ever possible. Here's how to recognize it. If "I'm just a clean person" feels true right down to your bones, you might be this type. If imagining a messy version of yourself feels almost identity-threatening, you might be this type. You're not just someone who cleans. You're someone who learned that being clean was the safest way to exist. The work isn't to become messy. The work is to find out who you'd be if you didn't have to be anyone in particular. This was never about cleaning. Now we get to pattern 5, the warehouse guardian. Most people don't see it, even in themselves, especially in themselves. At some point, cleaning stopped being something you do and became something that decides who you are allowed to be. It's not crisis, not anticipatory, not reset, not identity. It's something underneath all four, like an underground river no one has ever named. You've been doing this for so long, you can't tell anymore which parts of you are real and which parts were built. Whether you actually love order, or whether you've been performing it for so long that the performance became you. The alarms have been on so long, you've forgotten what silence sounds like. You've been protecting the warehouse so long, you've forgotten there's a world outside it. There is no specific trigger. The cost is everything, every relationship, every decision, every moment of rest. It all gets filtered through one question. Is this clean enough? Not the dishes, the whole life. You're not cleaning surfaces. You're cleaning the experience of being alive. You're cleaning your relationships of anything that might leave a mark. You're cleaning your body of any need that feels inconvenient. You're cleaning your mind of any thought that doesn't fit in a row. You're cleaning your spontaneity, your weirdness, your tenderness, anything that might be inconvenient. And you don't even notice it anymore. You're not watching this video. You're remembering something you never had words for, because the cleaning has been so seamless for so long that it stopped feeling like behavior and started feeling like personality. You might be cleaning a life you didn't choose, built around an identity that was never yours to begin with, a version of you assembled in childhood to keep you safe, and you've been maintaining it ever since, without ever asking who you would have been if you hadn't needed the cleaning at all, without ever asking, who would I be if I didn't have to do this? Maybe louder, maybe softer, maybe chaotic, maybe strange, maybe alive. You don't know, because you've never let the alarms go quiet long enough to find out. And this is where most people stop recognizing themselves. But here's what's beautiful. The fact that you've been doing this your whole life proves something. You're a survivor. Your warehouse had alarms going off, and you built a switch. You kept yourself alive in ways no one taught you. That's not pathology. That's intelligence. That's adaptation. That's a kind of brilliance most people don't recognize. Because it doesn't look heroic from the outside. It just looks like a clean kitchen. The work isn't to lose the cleaning. The work is to find out what's underneath it. What were you protecting? Who were you protecting it for? And maybe most importantly, who would you be if you didn't have to protect anything anymore? If you walked into your kitchen tomorrow and the alarms didn't ring when you saw a dish in the sink, who would be standing there? What kind of person? What would they want? What would they do with their hands if their hands didn't already have a job? You don't have to know yet, but you can start asking. That's the beginning of pattern 5 finally being seen. So how do you actually start? 3 small things. That's it. First, just sniffless. Notice when the cleaning starts, what feeling came before it? Anxiety, anger, sadness. Don't change anything. Just see it. The first step in changing a pattern is recognizing the pattern as a pattern, not as personality, not as preference. just as a pattern your nervous system runs because once it saved you. Second, try a small pause. Before you reach for the sponge, sit with the feeling for 60 seconds. Just 60. You can clean afterward, as much as you want. But for 60 seconds, let the feeling exist without translating it into action. This will feel impossible the first time. That's the practice. The discomfort isn't a sign you're failing. It's a sign your warehouse alarms are noticing that no one is responding. That's data. That's the beginning of choice. Third, choose one day per week where mess stays, not the whole house. Just one item out of place that you intentionally don't fix. A book on the coffee table, a dish in the sink, and observe what happens inside you. What rises up? What does the alarm sound like when you don't silence it? That's where the work begins. Not in the cleaning, in the listening. Remember the warehouse? The alarm sensors that have been on since childhood? They're still there. They probably always will be. But now you know they exist. And once you know, you can choose. You can choose to clean. That's still allowed. There's nothing wrong with cleaning. There's nothing wrong with order. There's nothing wrong with the way you've kept yourself safe. But you can also choose sometimes to look up at the actual sky, to notice that the room is safe, that you are an adult, that the warehouse is in your past, not in your present, that the alarms are scanning for threats that ended decades ago. And somewhere in that noticing, you might find the part of you that has nothing to do with cleaning. The part that was waiting. The part that survived not because of the cleaning, but underneath it. The part that has its own preferences, its own pace, its own ways of being alive that have nothing to prove. And the strange part is, nothing needs to change for this to begin. If this felt familiar, it means it was never just about cleaning. It was always about survival. And survival doesn't just because you finally noticed it. You don't clean your house. You regulate your nervous system. The warehouse is safe now. The doors are locked. But you are allowed to leave whenever you're ready. If you recognized yourself in any of those patterns, the next video goes deeper. Because cleaning is one of the things you do to feel safe. But there's another, and you've been doing it your whole life without realizing it. The next video is about the children who became parents, the kids who held their families together when the adults couldn't.